failure and success are intertwined. There's no success without going through some failure. You're going to experience failure. If you let it diminish your enthusiasm, you'll ultimately be worn out, wear yourself out, burn yourself out. That's the challenge of maintaining that enthusiasm.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today, we are joined by the co-founder of Pro Skills Basketball, former Baylor and Davidson player, and the greatest roommate I've ever had, Logan Kosmalski. Before playing at Baylor, Logan was an outstanding high school player at Trinity High School in Euless, Texas. After 2 years at Baylor, he decided to transfer to Davidson College, where he was a 2-year captain, as well as a 2-time recipient of the Wildcat Award, given annually to Davidson's top rebounder. After Davidson, Logan went on to play professionally across Europe in France, Poland, Germany, and Sweden. After 5.5 years playing professionally overseas, Logan retired to pursue pro skills basketball full-time, headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. Since 2011, he's been a director and head coach of Pro Skills Basketball. Before we hear from Logan, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast. Logan!
What's up, Maddie?
What's up, man?
I gotta say, I love the logo, man.
This one, the Jamodi?
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
It's awesome.
You've always had a way of just making me feel really good.
Hey, man, that's what I want to do, right? Good to see you, dude.
You too. Just two former teammates that haven't seen each other in a long time.
Yeah.
Getting back together on here. This is awesome.
A little older.
You don't look older though.
No, you don't either.
Oh,
you got a little gray. But
oh, gray. My forehead, it wasn't this big when we were around each other.
That's just part of it.
You're combing it forward a little bit to help it.
I got a little bit. Yeah,
you have very little gray.
I know that is a part of like my mom's side of the family.
You have good genetics.
My aunt who just passed away was like 77. Not a thing of gray, still dark like this.
Wow. So. You've always had great genetics though. Always. I mean, the height, everything. Tell me a little bit about, so are you still working with Pro Skills?
Yeah. So we have a club here in Philly that's, the pandemic really set us back. It was just getting off the ground. So, but yes, we have a club here that really helps that I can just, meet with and work with our director in this area. And then, our headquarters is still technically in Charlotte, but it's, after the pandemic, things have become just so remote and I spend most of my days doing this and then going off and seeing our people here or traveling every once in a while to visit our other clubs. So it's been good so far. Yeah. It's actually been better to have me because we have Philadelphia, we got something in New York, we got something in DC and some teams in Baltimore. So before they were really isolated, but now it's like I can just a day's drive, I can go down to Baltimore.
Yeah. So that's cool. You actually have your one club, but you have a lot of different locations but you're really connected. Because I've seen some like Pro Skills in Texas as a Nike team, and they have some Pro Skills teams in other areas that just kind of use their name. Yeah. But I don't know how truly connected they are.
No, we didn't want to go down that route. Like, right. You're going to represent our brand. You're going to be a part of our team, and you're going to be in our culture. And that's the whole reason we're doing this. Is to create a brand that can affect the culture of youth basketball in a positive way. And so we try to. We work really closely with our directors, with our people on the ground. We try to train our coaches, and we're very, very hands-on. We don't want people just to take our uniforms and give us money.
Yeah. What are some things with youth basketball that you see are going in the right direction right now? Because I feel like most of the tweets or most of anything that's out there is youth basketball is broken, our system's awful, all this stuff. But I've got to imagine there's people like you that are doing things the right way and trying to change it. So what are some good things?
That's a good question, man. It's we spend so many times trying to focus on the things that we don't like.
Right.
I think the good thing is you're seeing more. I mean, it's very inclusive. I mean, youth hoops. I mean, kids from all walks of life, all socioeconomic backgrounds, play and love the game and look up to NBA stars, which I mean I think is great. I think you're starting to see positive or negative. You're seeing a lot of parent involvement, which at the
That
end of
can
the day,
always go. I mean,
yeah, at the end of
obviously,
the
if
day,
you had to choose between more or less, you would choose more, but
absolutely.
then that can go bad.
Yes, and I think all the negative attention that youth hoops gets, and AAU and fights and stuff. I think it is waking up, opening people's eyes to like, hey, this isn't the best way to do this, and we try to take that mentality and we try to educate our players and our parents and our coaches. And I think I do see that popping up within other organizations, and even outside of the AAU scene with like clubs and teams. You have people like Point Guard College and U.S. sports camps that do a really good job of I look at those organizations and feel like we do culturally share a lot. We're just
Yeah.
kind of in different segments of the youth basketball space.
Man, I went to PGC twice in high school. So
Mm-hmm.
I call myself a grad, and then was able to direct for them for
Yeah.
5 summers. And you're right, like they're phenomenal. I haven't been able to work with USA basketball at all or in any way.
Yeah.
So, but I can't speak about that. But have you guys had any interaction with PGC or have any coaches that have either attended a session
Mm-hmm.
or have been working with them before?
So we have a guy that's currently on the ground in San Diego who knew one of our directors, but has spent a long time with PGC and growing up in that and developing in that environment. So he's trying to get us started in San Diego while at the same time directing camps in the summer with PGC. So
Nice.
he's really our only connection so far. But we are on, the Junior NBA put together a flagship network, which is people in the youth basketball space that come together with the Junior NBA and discuss youth hoops, um, from kind of holistically as kind of an organization or a board, I guess is what you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And Mano and a bunch of other PGC directors take part in that. So we've kind of gotten to know them in that respect as well.
All of those dudes are great and,
Mm-hmm.
and not just good basketball minds, but really solid people.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
anytime I get to, it's fun for me as a coach now to get to send people to that camp.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some really good select organizations in DFW that I feel like are in it for the right reasons and doing
Mm-hmm.
it the right way. I feel
Yeah.
like some good things I've seen. Um, One is not that winning's not important, but if that's the ultimate goal and the only thing we value, I've seen some youth coaches, select coaches, even high school coaches at times lose their mind in pursuit of that goal and
Yeah.
trample on people and set them back. And then the second thing is more of a positionless style of basketball
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where the biggest kid in fourth grade isn't just stuck down on the post. He's learning to handle it, learning to shoot it, learning. Those are some good things I've seen.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's like I was. I was always tall, just stuck in the
You could
post.
shoot it, Logan. You could shoot it.
That came a little bit later, but I think you're right. I think people, it is becoming positionless, and that is when it comes to like on the court game. Yeah, that is what you see, and I think you're also seeing. I love the trend of, and I'm a big believer in like positive bench behavior. I love watching benches in basketball. I spend as much time watching a bench as I do like what's going on the court. I think it's a really telling sign of
No doubt.
of people's mentality and an organization or a club's culture. So we try to focus on that a lot. And I think you're seeing it also, and I think you're seeing kids sort of embracing what they're seeing NBA players do and better college programs do. Like that's a huge part of the game. There's always a role to be played, and enthusiasm and positive energy coming from the bench. I think it's just a positive thing all around for everybody. On the court, on the bench, in the fan or in the stands. It's just all around positive.
Yeah. I think you're so right on the money with the value. And because when you look at when Golden State's bench and when the higher ups of basketball, when people are starting to highlight the way they're doing those things, it will trickle down. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballology. What's your BSA score? The Ballology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Ballology mobile app. Elevate your game. For those people that that will listen to this and don't know, Logan, one of the DFW's finest, great players to come out, but also you and I played select ball together going into our senior year in high school. And then it's not that I followed you down to Baylor, but you being interested in everything like was a big deal to me. The ability to us to be there together. We're just talking about how we are as bench players and the choice that we have to make to bring something, to bring value. I think you and I did that one. I think we did it really well, but even at those higher levels, I mean, there were games where you played a lot and I didn't, or vice versa, or neither of us played. But I felt like that was a choice that we always made, was no matter what, we're going to bring value to our team. And then I think by us being vocally active, I think Coach Bliss heard our voices and in some way thought, man, when psychological warfare, we need to sub in a guy. Who's that voice I'm hearing?
Yeah. Well, I want to correct you on one thing. I think I followed you down to Baylor in our times, playing AAU together, and I knew I distinctly remember you calling me and saying, "Hey, I just committed to Baylor. I know you're interested. Like, let's do it together." And
okay,
I do think I went down there and then made my choice quickly after that. But and honestly, Matt, I think I followed your lead when it came to those things. You were always somebody I recognized as having a just charismatic and positive and enthusiastic. I always really respected that about you, and I think it wasn't until after I left and I wasn't around you in that respect that I sort of realized, like, oh man, like Matt was such a positive influence on me when it came to like going through difficult times or being disappointed. Because I know, like you said before, there was my career at Baylor was sometimes I played a lot, sometimes I didn't, and having you next to me in those times when I didn't play a lot, or coming back home to the apartment that we shared when I was disappointed, like, and just having you're always just uplifting and positive. And then I think it was a really really strong influence on me that I probably took for granted in the moment, but looking back now, I'm so appreciative of.
I mean, I appreciate that. And I don't want the rest of our time to just be us complimenting each other.
No.
But there is I do get to, being a high school coach now, this is my 15th year overall, which is crazy to think about. But there are those players that, when I'm talking to current players, I use as examples, and you're one of those guys that, as far as the professionalism that you had towards not just your game, not just your weight room work, not just to your nutrition, but also academically, it was just, to me, and you're right. I think we always, when we're younger, we take things for granted. And even though I saw some of those areas, those aspects where you were excelling, I didn't necessarily follow you down those footsteps. So one apology I have is for your first 2 years of classes, the fact that you would walk into your academic advisor first, you'd get your class schedule. I would walk in right after you and say, just give me everything that Logan had. So I apologize for being your shadow for 2 years in classes. We were like, golly, I just need a little bit of a break from you. Sorry about that.
No, man, we fed off each other, and I think we recognized the positives that we each brought, and I think a couple of lessons that I've learned since then. So going back to what we were talking about bench behavior and you being a really positive influence on me, and I think I've taken that. One of my last years playing in Germany, I was older, but it's one of the bigger regrets, honestly, in my life is that I got into a really bad space when I didn't get what I thought I had deserved. I was coming back to the same team, and in the very first game I was ready to play, and I didn't get in, and I tried to talk to my coach, and I just felt wronged, and I spent almost an entire season on the bench in my own head, feeling resentful, not pulling the weight, like not playing the role that I had been given, whether or not I appreciated it or not. I sat there on the bench feeling sorry for myself and mad and not contributing and just kind of just overall negative. And I try to tell that story now to kids just to be like, hey, like you're going to get assigned a role, whether you like it or not, make the most of it, like approach it with positivity, search for ways that you can contribute, and overall just have fun with it, right? Like you see guys in the NBA on the benches. Now, granted, they're making millions of dollars, but
there you go. Yep.
but still, I mean, they have egos too, and they could very well sit there and the coach blamed this. The coach didn't give me what I deserve. This is it. But like at the end of the day, that's not as much fun as you like, right? Like basketball is going to be over. I would give anything to go be on a team again and just. I mean, if my role were to be a cheerleader on the side and wave towels and greet guys as they come off and pump guys up, then shoot, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. And more fun than sitting there and feeling down and depressed.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And how many years of pro basketball had you been playing at that point when you felt that?
That was one of my last years. That was probably like my 5th or 6th year. So it was one of my last seasons. And again, like, I mean, I tell that story now because I do feel like it is, it's a little bit embarrassing for me to tell that story because I was old. I was towards the end of my career and I had been through a lot and I hadn't learned that lesson. And it wasn't until I got done with it and I started doing what I'm doing now, working with kids, and I see what they're putting themselves through and I see the way that they're reacting. And I'm like, oh man, like that's what I did. And I really regret it. And, and I think back and back and back on like kind of probably what led me to that and why when I was with you at Baylor was one of the only times that I really didn't do that. And I feel like you were a really good influence on me in that respect.
I deflected all to honestly to Dick DiVenzio and PGC. PGC is not a sponsor of the podcast. I'd love for them to be, but no, but it's those lessons because I didn't really know. High school basketball, probably you felt the same way, was pretty easy near those last couple of years where you and I could pretty much do what we wanted, and me and my teammates at the Colony used to joke around and call our shots before possessions. I mean, it was simple. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time and how difficult and how athletic those dudes are and how at the Division I level. And what PGC helped me understand was, okay, what do you want? If you want more playing time, then you got to do things on the bench that'll actually lead to you getting that. Because what most people do is the exact opposite. And you see it in college basketball, definitely high school and select. Oh, you're not going to play me? Okay, instantly my body language is going to go bad. I'm going to show that I'm upset. I'm going to give less effort. I'm going to give less reminders, less spirit, less energy. But the idea is behind that's going to somehow get me closer to what I want, right? It's the exact opposite. So it's the idea of what is coach wanting us to do? Rebound. Okay, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to give reminders to rebound. And I mean, what a cool goal would be have your coaches stop film and comment on, hey, even though this guy's not playing, look what he's bringing. That to me, when your teammates start to dip down and have some issues, if you can stay consistent like that, I used to just think about it as stealing playing time. Okay, when you're John Lucas, when you're doing poorly, I'm going to come in and I'll edit that out. I'm going to come in and I'm going to steal your playing time, but the right way. And I think that's a shift that players can make.
Yeah, it's a huge lesson. And I mean, that's one we try to teach. And one of my favorite quotes was by a physicist. I can't remember his name now. I saw it in a movie, but he was talking about how he spent his entire career chasing down this theory of something to do in his line of physics. And here he was, like he was about to like find out the results of this final experiment, and he was really confident he was going to be proven right. And he stopped and he's drinking some coffee and he says, I tell my students, jumping from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm is the big secret to success. And I think we're missing. I was like, I thought it was so great, man. I was like, the undiminished enthusiasm part, right, is the part that's hard, that I feel like I want to get that over to kids, right? Like failure and success are intertwined. You know, like there's no success without going through some failure, right? So you're going to experience failure. If you let it diminish your enthusiasm, then you'll ultimately be, worn out, wear yourself out, burn yourself out, right? That's the challenge of maintaining that enthusiasm. And you fail, keep going, just keep going, keep your energy up, keep your enthusiasm. It's quite a challenge, and I think it's almost counter to what we see a lot.
And the question then is if everybody, I feel like most people would acknowledge that they've either heard that before, or they know it to be true, that when I'm in the middle of a hard time, instead of getting beat down by that or doing what feels right or natural, to do the opposite. Most people have heard that before. Why don't more people do it? Because it's really hard. It's really hard to stay positive. That's where, I mean, you and I can probably think back to all the teams we've either played on or the teams we've coached. Who are our favorites, or the ones that we remember? Not necessarily just the best players, but those that didn't get everything that we know that they wanted, but still brought an amazing attitude and brought value every day. Those are the people we remember.
Used it as positive motivation, as opposed to like something that can like beat you down and ultimately bury you in your journey. But no, I think it is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that I still, I mean, like, let's be honest, like I don't, I have to remind myself of these things pretty much on a daily basis, and try to set the habit of embracing challenges and embracing mistakes. And I think that's kind of what I've learned is it's a habit, like the way that we think and the way that we respond are conditioned in us at young ages, more than likely, or, what our parents did. And like, recent science has shown, like, if you can work to establish new habits of thinking, new habits of the ways that you respond. And it's a daily practice. I think people nowadays think, hey, I'm going to read this book, or I'm going to do this one thing, and a light bulb's going to click and it's going to be smooth sailing for me. But it's a day in, day out struggle to change the way you think, and to change your habits, and to change your behaviors. But I mean, the good news is it is possible. The bad news is it's really hard.
Really hard. And that's where the best thing I think we can do as coaches is when we see these young people already starting to build negative habits, is to be truth tellers and to help them. Because it's the analogy I've used with players is it's like a tree. You want to hear a story? All right.
Yeah. I like it.
All right. So there's a sensei and his pupil. They're walking through the forest, and the sensei sees this little tiny tree, but it's only about a foot long. It's a baby tree. Sensei tells the pupil, rip that tree out of the ground. And he did it. One hand, bent over, ripped it out really quick. Went a little bit farther along, saw a tree about shoulder height, a little bit thicker. He said, rip that tree out. And he had to really work at it, talk 5, 10, 20 minutes. And finally, though, bent it over, ripped it out. And he goes a little bit farther, and there's this huge tree, 100 feet tall, wide. And he says, rip that tree out. And the pupil says, I can't do that. The whole idea behind that is when we see these bad habits forming, we need to ourselves rip them out when they're small, when they're new, before those roots get really deep, or else it'll get to a point. And that's where what happens. You see it, unfortunately, on the news with famous people or well-known people, but it happens in every day as habits get too deep, they're too hard, and then harm comes from them. And the flip side is true with positive habits.
Yeah. It's funny you said that. I was just having a conversation with my brother like last week, and I was reading a book about the Dalai Lama, and it was like the Dalai Lama was talking about some, abstract philosophical concept. And he was like, this is introduced into to Tibetans, like, when we're 8 and 9 years old. And I was thinking, like, you guys talking about this stuff when you're 8 and 9 years old, right? Like, but I think and I thought, like, maybe here in America we are waiting too long to instill these things and like talk about deeper philosophical, psychological things with kids from a younger age. That way, we're like just what you said. It's not allowing those roots to take hold in a negative respect and grow to something that's going to be really challenging to correct later on in life, right? So I'm just a big believer, I think, in being open and honest with kids and like challenge. I think kids are smarter than we give them credit for, and they can understand things at a very young age, and to challenge them to think about the ways that they respond and right and wrong and good and bad, like I think is maybe something that we're not giving kids enough credit for at a young age now and waiting too long to talk about.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. Something that popped up in my head when we were talking, about players and their roles, and as the NBA players that are sitting on the end of the bench. And I think sometimes we forget the fact that those players, they struggle with that too. They struggle with the role that they've been giving. And even though you and I say, well, yeah, they're getting paid millions of dollars, like sign me up for that. If you're a competitor, if you feel like you can still play and you still want to offer that to a team and have that opportunity, I don't think the money matters at that point. It's so this idea of being a star at your role, I'm gonna ask you what you think about that, and then I'll come around with the way I think about that.
Well, I think it goes back to what you said before, right? Being a star in your role, no matter what it is. Like, I think looking at a lot logistically, the logic behind, hey, I have this role that I don't like, that it was kind of forced upon me, and I'm not going to embrace it. I'm going to fight against it, and I'm going to approach it negatively. How is that going to set you up for what you want, right? So I think what you said before, yes, it's difficult when you are a competitor to accept things. One thing I've heard is like, just because you accept something doesn't mean you can't take positive action to correct it, right? So like accepting the fact that like, hey, I'm a bench player right now. I'm accepting it, and I'm going to star in it, and I'm going to make it the best. I'm going to be the best bench supporter that I can be, is actually going a long way to setting you up for what you really want, as opposed to fighting against it, not accepting it, not taking positive actions to correct it. You're going the other direction.
You nailed it.
Is that what you thought?
You nailed it. Like just because I think something doesn't mean it's right, but that's how I view it. And one of the pet peeves of mine is when I see coaches, either on social media or even if I've been around them, use that term of be a star at your role. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I understand what they're going for, but when they use the examples of Patrick Beverley, Dennis Rodman, and what they're doing, they're trying to say, okay, Dennis Rodman scored 0 points and 25 rebounds. Look at him. You got to be a star at your role like that guy. Mm-hmm. You're telling a high school kid that for your program, I don't need you to score at all, just rebound. I understand. And you nailed it. You said he needs to accept that that's the role that'll get him on the floor the most, that'll help his team win. But we can't use those NBA players as examples, because if you watch The Last Dance, in college, Dennis Rodman scored. He averaged like 25 a game. Patrick Beverley averaged 25 a game in college. Those guys are stars at their role at the NBA level, making millions of dollars. But for a high school kid who has aspirations to play in college, they have to be able to score. Mm-hmm. So my message is be a star at your role, because this will help us win. This will help you get on the floor. But then, and you nailed it, off the floor, you better be working on your craft, becoming better with your handle, being able to shoot and score from multiple areas. Or else, if you're a high school player and you're averaging 0 points and 10 rebounds, I just don't know. And you have aspirations to play after. I just don't know where you're going to play.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's hard to, in some ways I think I'm guilty of it as well, but like using the people at the top of the top of the top of the basketball world as examples, it's a little bit, I think there's a big disconnect between high school kids and trying to do that. So I would completely agree. And I think it's important. Even, I mean, I'm not a coach. I mean, I run a business. But I think it's the same of like, if you want to show people that you appreciate their role. This is what the organization needs right now. This is what the team needs right now from you. But I'm also dedicated towards helping you improve in these other areas so that you can help us to a greater extent, or you can achieve whatever your wishes and desires are at the next level in another organization, on another team. I think that's what coaches at the end of the day should really be about, is like taking those players and putting them in the best situation to achieve their goals, right? It's not about, there's got to be a balance between, this player's going to help me win right now, and I'm going to help him get what he wants and needs.
I think the coach that you and I played for at Baylor, or for me, the first one, was the theme was always team first, team first, team first. And there is a idea of, we need this collection of people to be all about that team and success moving forward, and to a point be selfless in making that happen. But then there's a lot of strength, and it makes a lot of sense to also be working with and promoting the individual success. That's where I think Coach Drew has done it really well, is you get these guys at Baylor now that I jokingly tell, or no, I'm honest, I don't think I could play for Baylor in the last decade. I think I'd be a really good manager for how good they are. And so I got into Baylor at the right time. But he does a great job of, listen, like, buy in, and we're all about the team and their culture of joy. But then he's also moving right along with them. We also want to develop you as a person. We want you to achieve your goals as an NBA player, or whatever you want to do. And it's like those two things are moving together.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's just a healthier way to do it than team, die to yourself every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it has to be. And I think that's what you see top organizations, teams, businesses, whatever it might be. Like, people need to know their current role is appreciated and how it helps them, but also, like, they want to be poured into. They want to be cared about and shown that, like, hey, we care. Like, I agree with you. It's a dangerous concept to say, like, hey, lose yourself in this organization and or this team, and that's all that really matters. Like, that just kind of goes against human nature. And I feel like that's a perfect illustration. You got to be moving along together, and this is a mutually beneficial relationship, right? You help the team, we help you, we all move towards our individual goals and our team goals. And you know what, sometimes, like, if those two things aren't moving together, it doesn't work, which is okay sometimes, right? Like, not everybody's the right fit to play at Baylor, or to work with our company, or whatever. So there needs to be, in my mind, before those forces join, there needs to be a clear conversation and there's understanding of, hey, this is how we can work together, and we're a cultural fit.
Crazy shift in our talk. This is something I've always wanted to ask you, and I don't think I ever have. What were some of the major differences, now, besides the obvious one of the dysfunction and the things happening in our program? Besides those, what were some of the major differences from when you're at Baylor and when you went to Davidson?
I mean, the first one that jumps to my mind, I mean, at Baylor, I was really close with you and Greg Davis and Jason Pritchard, and that was, we were in our locker room together. At Davidson, our whole team was like that. It was a much more cohesive locker room, and I'm not sure if it was just because it was a smaller school, but I think that's what Coach McKillop at Davidson does so well, is he finds, if you don't fit in the Davidson culture and you're not about being a team guy and and you can't hang out with the rest of the team off the court, then you're not a fit at Davidson. And
that's a major shift right there.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yes,
because I think the message that you and I received was like from the head coach is, I'm not your friend, which I'm okay with that, but I'm not your friend. You have enough friends. I'm here just for basketball. And but that also kind of bled down to I don't even care if you guys like each other, want to hang out. You're here to do a job. Yeah. And there's only a point where, I mean, if your talent is just so far above everybody else's, you can still win and be successful with that type. But if all things are equal and that's the feeling in the locker room and the culture, I just don't know how you're going to have sustained success with that.
I don't either, especially in the college ranks when, I mean, I'll be honest, and I think most people are this way, but I mean, I was 18, you went through hard times, and when it was, maybe I was more sensitive than most, but hard times at Baylor, I felt more alone than I did. I went to Davidson, and I had some struggles there as well, but I felt like I had a really solid foundation of a team that really cared, as opposed to like sometimes I walk in the locker room at Baylor, been struggling, and I knew I had you, but there was more. I felt less supported, more alone in the Baylor locker room, which I think for 18-year-old kids is not a good place to be.
Yeah. And what other changes? What other differences?
Yeah, besides like kind of a locker room vibe, I mean, it was just.
What about style of play? What were some differences there?
We wanted to play fast at Davidson. It was a lot of. I mean, we never walked the ball up the court.
Did you ever run flex?
We never ran flex.
Good for you, man. Good for you. I'll tell you that running flex against Kansas, where you're trying to make the ball reversal up near half court, that's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, that was you, man. I was in the basket at that point. No, we ran a lot, and one thing I will say is Coach McKillop is so detailed. I mean, he is like, if he wants you to be at a spot on the court when this happens, or when it comes to timing, spacing, like where your strength is as a shooter and where the spots are that you're comfortable and most efficient shooting from, like all that stuff is hammered into you on a daily basis. So that was what really struck me when I came to Davidson, is just the level of attention to detail was something I had never experienced.
You and I didn't have social media wasn't a thing when we were in college, and yeah, I'm thankful for that too. But I think I can remember the day, because in the movie Social Network about Facebook, they actually make a comment in that about Baylor has it, like it was when it was first getting to some colleges, and I can remember going to the Slick and people huddled around those computers that were in there, and then what are you guys doing? We're building our Facebook profile. I'm like, what? So I remember when it was starting, but it was harder to follow people and everything. So I just didn't do a great job of keeping up with you your final 2 years there. So tell me a little bit about, how did your career finish? You're as a junior and a senior at Davidson.
Well, so when I transferred, back then, it seems like those days might have passed, but I had to sit out a year.
Yeah.
Which was difficult, but if I'm really being honest about it, it was probably the best thing for me. I had been, from the time I was middle school all the way through Baylor. I mean, it was basketball, it was ups and downs, it was pressure, and I think there was probably a part of me after I left Baylor that was a little bit burnt out. So I had to sit out, but then my return to the court the next year was kind of a rough start. I was behind. Things were moving fast. I mean, you can practice all you want, but until you get on the court under the lights in front of fans, like things are moving at a different speed, and it took me a long time to adjust to that, and a long time to adjust to kind of the nature of how Coach McKillop wanted us to play. And it ended up being better for me, but it was so different than what I'd come from, and I didn't have game experience playing that style. So my first, I think, half a season after my redshirt year was pretty rough. I was in foul trouble just constantly. I wasn't shooting really well, and I wasn't and it was even more difficult because I had come in with such high hopes, right?
Yeah.
I was coming from a bigger conference. I knew I was going to do well. I was
Your
excited to
brother
do
had
well.
played there and had great success
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And it was humbling
Yeah.
from the very beginning. But then, I mean, I ended up coming back and doing pretty well that year. And in my senior year, I was an all conference player in the Southern Conference. And we were 16-0 in Southern Conference play, and then lost in the semifinals of our conference tournament, which was another tough lesson for us to learn. So I never got to play in the NCAA tournament, which was, you know, obviously a big something I wish I had had the chance to do as a college player. But no, I mean, so my 2 years at Davidson were a rough start, but for the most part, I think I kind of found my groove. I had ups and downs in betweens and stretches of not playing well, stretches of, you know, I scored 25 against Duke on national TV, and that was.
Do you still have that game somewhere?
I don't know.
That'd be pretty cool to watch.
VHS.
Yeah, VHS. You'll have to transfer it, and that'd be pretty cool to watch. I think you nailed something though, that a lot of high school players don't know going into it of what it is like to transfer, and how difficult it is sitting out that year, or even now where sometimes they don't have that year to get acclimated into a brand new system, new style, new training, new vocabulary, new concepts. And so, I mean, you and I, without going into names, I remember guys that transferred in to Baylor that had done great things before, but struggled to ever even get on the floor. And me personally would look over on the bench and think, how in the world am I playing over those guys? Because I remember watching them play. And then even fast forward to, you know, my senior year when all that stuff went down, and that connection with you. And I've let people know that I did look at going to Davidson, and that me monster took over of, I need to do something, because I don't even think we're going to have a season next year. But I kind of knew going into that conversation with Coach McCulp and he confirmed it, man, 1 year guys, that's tough. The odds of you really being productive for that one, or in your case, even 2 years is low.
Yeah, it was a challenge, and, you know, a challenge that I wasn't even expecting. You know, I think I hadn't even thought that would be a possibility, right? Like I started at Baylor in the Big 12 as a freshman.
You had some great games.
And I lost playing time to when guys like Lawrence Roberts came in, which, I mean, rightly so, right? Like Lawrence ended up playing in the NBA, and
he was a pro. Yeah,
very, very talented player. So, but, you know, as I went to Davidson, my expectations did not match the reality of what ended up happening, and it was a tough lesson.
Maybe that's a good point though too, is when you're going into a new situation. Just at PGC, they talk about drop your comparisons. You know, comparison is the thief of all joy.
Yep.
And so managing those expectations and going into a new situation of I'm open, I'm ready to learn, I'm not expecting anything, or not that you were entitled or felt entitled, but I think that's what a lot of people will feel nowadays as they go to a different situation. And this is what I should be getting right at the very beginning. I mean, you really got to go into new situations with a humble mindset.
Oh man, that's another painful lesson that's, you know, come to me kind of later in life than I would have liked. But I think you're spot on, right? Like, life is about expectations, right? And I've tried to form the habit in myself of, like, as I'm approaching new situations, like, what am I going to learn from this, and let me think realistically about what my expectations are, right? And then think about what it's like if those expectations don't happen, and how am I going to respond, you know, and just constantly be willing to learn and you know, improve, like, no matter what happens, failure, success, learn from it and keep moving forward. But yeah, man, like, questioning your own expectations and being prepared for whatever comes your way, I think was, you know, as we started this business, and as I kind of became the one that took over, I was like, I need to, like, look at my expectations. Like, things are going to go wrong all the time, right? If I'm jumping into this thinking that like, oh man, I'm going to do this and it's going to be smooth sailing. And you always envision like problem free times. It's just not realistic, And I think having a child has taught me that. Running my own company has taught me that. And I wish I could have learned it in basketball a little sooner than I did. But
I think it does come down to, because part of the idea behind this podcast is not just what you do, but how you do what you do. That is important to learn. And so you and I are talking about managing expectations. And when you go into like a leadership role like you're in, of the danger of looking too far ahead of what I think is going to happen or what might actually happen. I think a way to combat that is your daily habits. What are you doing daily to continue to keep yourself moving forward? Because if you don't have that mentality, you might skip steps and get in trouble in the long run.
Yeah. And I think it's developing, a mentality of like resilience, how resilient are you? Because and that's been something that we try to talk about within Pro Skills. We want to develop and help the kids become more resilient, right? I think one thing we see right now is the instant gratification culture of, hey, I want this, I'm going to get it instantaneously, and when our kids are faced with struggle and with challenges, if they haven't developed the habit of resilience before, and like taking everything that happens to you and learning from it and being resilient and moving on, it's really painful for a lot of kids. And we think that, if we can be a small part in helping kids think and look at things differently, respond to challenges differently than we do, we're helping kids become more resilient, which is just such a crazy important skill to have in life.
Yeah, but I think you nailed it. Helping them through the challenges, not keeping them from having challenges.
Yeah, what a disservice.
Oh man, and I'm at a small private Christian school in DFW. We got 350 kids here. I love the school's mission. I love being here. I don't, unless I feel led to do anything, I haven't felt that at all over the last 9 years. So, but what I see is from parents out of love. I feel like it comes out of love, but they don't want their kids to experience heartache or trials or loss. And so the moment that somebody does come in, like sport to me is just one of the best vehicles for teaching pain and loss and struggle. But in a safe place, like pain of losing someone, or of something that's tough. I don't know if you're ever truly prepared for that, but we can help them with experiencing some tough times in a very controlled environment of like basketball. Hey, you lost a game. That's really tough. You didn't get playing time. That's really tough, but you can overcome and bounce through. I don't know. I just see, and I'm a parent. I got to make sure that I'm not rescuing them.
It's hard as a parent. And I heard an interesting phrase the other day. One of our coaches said, the term has always been helicopter parents. They're looking over, like now the term is lawnmower parents. They're like, hey, I'm cutting the grass in front of you so you don't experience any obstacles or any challenges, which is obviously, just like you said, it's such a disservice, and I think as a parent, you're looking at, oh man, I don't want to see my kids suffer. I don't want them to experience heartache or ever be hurt or uncomfortable, which is a very natural parent emotion. But I see it with my wife. She tries to make sure my son just doesn't experience any.
It's okay, babe. It's okay. He's not getting in. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. He'll learn from it. And the funny thing is that like when I look back on some of my biggest struggles, like I'm actually thankful for them, right? Because they've taught me and they've changed me and they've allowed me to grow into who I continue to grow to be, right? So like in some ways, I think at some point in life, you look back like, oh man, like that really changed me. And I learned a lot of resilience and overcoming those really, really difficult times, because they're going to happen, right? Like they're going to happen at some point in your life. And if you're not prepared for them in some way, it's really easy to get caught off guard and go through some and make it even more difficult on yourself.
Yeah. One of the biggest struggles I think parents have with sports, it's just not basketball, but is seeing their kid sit on the bench and not play. Now, one thing I like about the select model at times is that a lot of parents go to practice. So because they drive their kids there. So they're sitting there, they're listening, they're seeing some things. And to me, it shortens the gap a little bit between what they see in a game, and what they're understanding. It makes that closer. But when I have parents come in, probably 10 years ago, I was in the camp of, we don't talk about playing time. I'll talk about anything with your kid, but not playing time. I've thrown that out because
totally reversed. Yeah.
I had a teacher say, and this was great, a teacher say, we would never tell parents, I'm not going to talk about your grades, your son's grades. I'll talk to them about anything else, talk to you about anything else, but not his grades. What? Like that doesn't make any sense. What are your thoughts on having that conversation with parents about playing time?
I mean, depending on age, I think it's appropriate. I think at some point it needs to be had with the child. That's another thing that I see that is a little bit, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but when at some point kids have to be treated like people and given some responsibility and take some ownership of having tough conversations and hearing feedback, so, and then I think it's at some point it becomes a disservice when a parent tries to be the intermediary between whoever's leading the child and the child, right? Like there needs to be a direct connection. So like, a fourth grader, no, like let's have a conversation with mom and dad and the player. But I think if you're in high school, it needs to be had with the player directly. Like, hey, this is, and I think if a coach approaches it the right way and this is what I see, I'm going to be honest. Here's why you're not playing. Here's what I want you to improve upon. Like, let's have this conversation. Then I think at the end of the day, that is what's best for the child instead of having mommy and daddy take the lead and have the conversation, right?
Yeah. And I've tried to, so I think they come in and they sit, and a lot of times there's a lot of emotion in it. And I think it's important that we listen and we allow them to speak all the way through how they feel. And this is more of the parent side. I do agree with the kid being there, but there's always this part of me that wants to kind of say, like, what, it's really hurting my son, or his feelings are hurt, or he's
hurting his confidence,
or his confidence is hurt. Yeah. I always want to respond with yes, like okay, because it's okay. Like it's okay. Oh, he's feeling a little hurt. Okay. The biggest thing is like, now what?
Yes.
My son's confidence is down. One, you could launch into a whole talk about how where does confidence come from? It comes from preparation, what you think about all day. And no coach out there can steal your son's confidence. If that's the case, then he knows deep down he hasn't prepared and he doesn't have the right to be confident. So we can talk about that for now. But it's the whole idea of, like you said a little bit ago, allowing them to go through these times, because then you might find out how badly you really want something.
Yes. And we hear that a lot too. It's like, hey, he's not playing. It's really hurting his confidence. Like you said, okay, right? Like how is he going to respond? Because it's not going to be the last time. It's not, it's in basketball now. It could be a teacher in high school. It could be a professor in college. It could be a boss when he gets older. Your challenge is your confidence is going to be challenged from time to time, right? And you're not building the habit of resiliency by removing that obstacle, right? Like let's help them get over that obstacle. Let's help them become more resilient and not hand over their confidence to somebody else to control.
Yeah. I think if you're a parent or a coach, or a parent or a player that listens to this, and you've ever thought of this person's hurting my confidence, or you as a parent, you've ever told, going back to my first select experience with Darren Williams Elite, which is not around anymore. But coaching that team, we're at tryouts, and I teach more of a free flowing running gun style that really allows players to play with freedom within concepts, but we don't run plays. It's a lot more about pace and space. Yep. So I'm teaching that style, and with that comes the freedom to shoot, especially when this was like our first practice or tryout. I don't know these kids. I don't know what they can do. So I'm encouraging them all, if you're open, which we define what that is, you're allowed to shoot threes. Well, after the practice, his mom comes up and says, "Oh, just so thankful that my son is playing for you," which I thought, okay, what's the why behind that? Because you don't know me at all. And then she follows it up with, well, at his school, man, his coach just really took his confidence. And right there, like that cringe moment, I wanted to almost say, well, you know what? I just don't know if this is going to work out, because if they're willing to think that way and talk that way about their school coach, how soon until it comes back full circle to me when they're not getting what they think they deserve or what they want?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's to the credit of parents. I think it's difficult. I mean, if you haven't played athletics at a high level, or not everybody played in college and got to play in a competitive environment for as long as we did. So these are painful lessons that you and I experienced and learned from. And sometimes I gotta reevaluate my expectations with parents. And then they're like,
yeah,
hey, they didn't have that. Like, I feel like it's our obligation to educate not only players, but like let's talk and like let's think this through with parents as well. Like, how are you? This is a team effort, right? Everybody has a role to play, because I think the frustrating part for coaches is you can be as well intentioned and pour your heart into helping a kid, but as soon as the kid gets in the car with mom and dad on the way home, gets in the house around the dinner table, and excuses start coming, blame starts being thrown, like it's going to be nearly impossible for any coach at any level to get through to that player.
So true. One of my favorite stories to tell, I don't know if you remember this, but we were playing TCU up here in Fort Worth. Only game of my career where I played all 40 minutes. I never came out and played with John and all those guys. We were kind of dual point guards, but like I tell players all the time, like, every player has the game. Like, it was the game for me. Everything just seemed to go right. We lost, but a week later we're playing SMU and I played 47 seconds. And me, like, nothing changed in that week as far as my preparation or how I practiced or what I did. But coming out after that game, my parents, you remember my mom, she's just staring at me, and my dad asked, what have you done? Like, what'd you do wrong? Like, why are you in trouble? And
I'm like, blame on you immediately.
Yeah. Right? And I'm like, I'm telling you guys. So then after a 3-hour conversation that led nowhere, I just basically had to make the choice of not trying to understand every decision that my coach makes, trusting that there is a process and that if I stay consistent. But I mean, again, I was a 20 or 19-year-old having already played a year of college basketball. How many junior high or high school players, after having that 3-hour talk with their parent, is going to be able to come to that type of decision? It is. You're right. It's a really tough spot that a lot of kids and families are in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it takes experience. It takes mentorship and communication, man. Communication is just it's so vital and difficult when you're in environments where so many people need to be on the same page and understand where the ship is headed, and be on board and communicate clearly and effectively. And in some ways, like doing our best to take the emotion out of it, right? And see things from other people's perspective. And sometimes the coach is just doing what he thinks is right. And, I can I'm perfectly entitled to ask for clarification later on. And if I get an honest answer, it's my decision to determine whether or not I see a future in where I am, So it's just, group dynamics and social psychology is, to me, just so fascinating and such a big part of what you do with your team, what I do with our organization, and it's just getting people it's leadership. It's you know it's organization, and it's endlessly fascinating for me.
What are your thoughts on, at the beginning of the year? I think most coaches will have a team meeting or a program meeting. I do mine over Zoom now because we're a private school, so a lot of kids, they don't live in the same neighborhood. We got Flower Mound, we got people, Euless, we got people from all over coming, to Faith, and so. But with the pandemic, I did a Zoom, and I had the most participation I've ever had at a parent meeting, as far as people coming to it, because it was just they're at home. So that's one thing. But then what are your thoughts on going a little bit more in depth into playing time, the why behind it, how we're human and we're not always going to be perfect, but then also helping their expectations and how to approach that? What are your thoughts on doing something like that?
I mean, I think it's great. I think expectations absolutely should be set as clearly and honestly and as genuinely as possible. And I was just talking about this with somebody the other day, but I think the biggest lesson that I've learned over my time with our company is that you can do that, and there's still people that they hear it, they nod along, they say it on the same page, then it happens, and it's like, hey, I told you this was it was going to be this way.
Don't you remember our talk that we had over Zoom?
And there's some people like they just they hear and like no, they don't. Maybe they do, maybe they didn't, maybe they didn't know that it was going to be like this way. So like that's again, I had to reevaluate my expectations and thinking like, hey, just because I say something one time and people even hear it and say that they agree, it's still likely to you're not going to get through to everybody, right? And so I think that's where like a little bit of you as a college coach and us doing what we do, there's a lot of luck involved, right? Like the right personalities coming together at the right time with setting the right expectations, and you got to be lucky in a lot of respects that you have the personalities that agree to things and understand and adjust when times get difficult. And so yeah, I've really started to appreciate the luck factor.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
You're one of the most, when I knew you, when I was around you a ton, you're one of the most disciplined people that I knew. And I kind of mentioned earlier in all those areas where I felt like, golly, Logan's just a machine in his approach to things. So now as a business owner and as a dad and a little bit older, what are some daily habits that set you up for success?
I try to make sure I get enough sleep. I try to make sure I've really changed my relationship with food and how I eat, which is, it's funny you mentioned that. I think my parents would agree. In middle school, I remember I decided like, I don't think sodas are very healthy. And I just stopped drinking soda from one day to the next and have for the rest of my life, so I do have that, once I decide something is the right way to go, and I try it and it feels good, I do tend to stick with things. So, how I eat, how I sleep, and making sure I get enough exercise. And,
what's your diet like now? What are you following?
I eat once a day, and I don't eat meat. And I stay away from processed stuff, sugars.
How much do you have? Okay, there's no meat in it, and you're only eating once a day. What time of day? Because I'm fascinated in stuff like this. What time of day do you eat? And then how much do you have to eat in that window, especially without any meat, to sustain you?
Yeah. Well, you remember me, man. I like to eat.
And you're 6'8". You're not like a little person. Yeah.
Let me preface that. Like I will, I will snack throughout the day with like on something that I feel is like kind of healthy. But I eat one meal, and when I do eat that meal, I eat a good amount. But I make sure I eat a good amount of healthy things. So for me, that's dinner. I get up and I have my coffee with some creamer, and I'll do that once, and then in the afternoon maybe I'll have a snack of some sort of veggies or nuts or something, and then then I'll eat a large healthy dinner before I go to sleep. So
what's your workouts like right now?
Oh man, I was really it wasn't CrossFit, but I was on like that sort of train for like a long time. Then the pandemic struck and I couldn't go to my gym, and I got like everybody else, it's not a Peloton bike, but it is like a spin bike, and I've been on that for like the last
I
couple
could
of
see
years.
you biking. I could see it. Yeah.
I mean, I've discovered too that like I'm past the days of thinking that I know what's best.
Yeah.
Right. I want somebody to put me through a workout. And then the thing about me, like I'm a very good follower too. Like I will just tell me what to do. And I will be like, from a workout standpoint, like tell me what to do and I will do it. You are the expert. I'm going to follow you.
My wife and I were working out at a gym here in South Lake for a while together, and we were actually paying a guy. She did some fitness competitions. Not when I say bodybuilding, people think, like the scary big, but there's different levels of bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. So she was one of the levels that, I mean, she's pretty hot to me. So, of
course,
edit that out. No, but so she was doing that, and I asked this guy, hey, will you just kind of train me too? I forgot how much I love being coached and told what to do, because for the last 15 years, it was just, well, Jana jokes with me all the time, because I'll come in and say, babe, I got a new workout. I'm going to start this. And about every 2 or 3 weeks, I've got a new workout that I'm starting. So I never finish anything, but I'm always doing something. Yeah, but you're right about that.
I can understand that.
Yeah, but you're right about being coached is fun.
Yeah, it really is kind of fun. And like, I mean, I made so many mistakes, man. One of my regrets, Matt, looking back on my college or my basketball career, is like thinking that I knew what was best to make myself a better player. Like it's a coach's job to get a team. I wish I would have, and my dad helped me in a lot of ways. But particularly from like an athletic performance standpoint, I wish I would have invested at a young age and like helped me become a better athlete, help me become stronger. Even somebody to help me with like the mental side of the game, and preferably somebody that could do both, because I think about the things, I mean, even today, like the trends of strength shoes and all the bogus stuff that's out there, that it's going to be the quick fix. It's going to help you jump higher in no time. Like, that's just, I wish I would have found somebody in the know to really make me a better athlete in that sense.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Vanilla.
Oh, that's right. But you don't eat sweets. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Place you most like to travel?
The beach.
Nice. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1.
Always 1.
Always 1. Godfather
or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Nice. Hey, buddy, this was awesome.
No, man, good. And I would also like to, I mean, let's follow this up with I would just love to catch up with you.
Are you saying this is a part 2, or you want to do a part 2, or just
no,
me and you
talk?
Saying,
like, what if I just called you and we caught up on other stuff?
I would love that. Love to catch up and talk hoops with you and just really reconnect and stuff. But man, thank you for your time, and you're one of the best.
Thanks for having me, man. It was great catching up with you. And one of my big regrets is losing touch with so many people from my Baylor days. So hopefully we can rekindle it a little bit.
You know what's crazy? I was thinking about this before. I know you need to get off. Was you made a comment that you never played in post or the NCAA March Madness, and I think you and I both had this dream or idea of what it would be like to go to Baylor together. When your coach says that you're going to be the pillars of the program, you make the NIT as freshmen, and you're thinking this is really going to happen. But you and I both, neither of us, I never got to play in it either. And obviously, you know how my senior year went with 6 scholarship players, but we were both still successful, and we're able to get a lot out of that. So good for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's I wish I could have, but life moves on.
That's right, man.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.